You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, we're going to try that again because I realized the sound wasn't on. So the Pelicans and every team need more three-point shooting in this league, and one of the best is available via trade should the Pelicans go after Buddy Hield and bring him back to New Orleans. It's a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's get that intro again for you.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Thursday, live at 7 p.m. Central. We've been doing these every week. Took last week off. We're back to it. We're going to keep going. I am just dropping everything and all over the place here right now on this Thursday. That's how excited I am to be with y'all. So we are going to talk about Buddy Hield today. We'll talk a little bit about Giannis coming to New Orleans potentially, and the implications of the draft picks, building off of something we talked about earlier in the week. And of course, we're here to answer your questions. And if you want to support Locked On Pelicans, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, coming to y'all like no one else is. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LOCKEDONNBA for a free water bottle with any purchase. You won't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise you. So if you're here in the chat hanging out with me, let me know if you're an everydayer. If you have questions, put them in the chat. The one rule is just don't spam the chat. We'll get to your questions. We got time. There's no rush on anything today, and I'm excited to be here with y'all. Kevin Byers, who's here often, says can't wait for the show. Josh Darby says let's get it. Always enjoy the Thursday live streams. Shnev08, trading for Buddy would make my jersey from his rookie season in my closet make more sense. Trey, love the show. You the GOAT. Other people are the GOAT, but I appreciate you being here. Mick Vander Frago says, everydayer Pelicans health. Yeah, that's kind of the theme of this Pelican season, health, which they're not off to a great start with the Trey Murphy injury, with the Jose Alvarado injury, but the Jose one I don't think is going to end up being a big deal. So the Pelicans last season were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. And there's a little bit of, I think, a misnomer when it comes to the Pelicans and their three-point shooting, which I'll touch on in a second. But when you look at some of the numbers, they were 29th out of 30 teams, so second to last in terms of three-point attempts per game at just 30.1. Because they took so few, even though they shot it relatively well, 36.4%, that's 15th, so exactly middle of the league, they were 23rd in three-point makes. When you have players like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, you need three-point shooting to really help space the court for them. Something to keep in mind, because Zion does not take threes, these numbers are impacted. If your best player is, say, Steph Curry, who shoots a lot of threes, you're going to be higher in those three-point shot attempt rankings than a team whose best player is a big man that scores at the hoop. The flip side of that is the Pelicans score more and shoot more at the rim than many other teams because of that. Does that make sense? While it's not that they just don't take three-point attempts and they're settling for mid-rangers or other things, it's simply when you look at the shot selection of the players on this team, it doesn't favor the three-point look. Works for Brandon Ingram too, who needs to up his volume from three because he's actually a good three-point shooter there, right? So that's why I do think it's a bit of a misnomer. This is a team that with Zion is probably never going to be in the top 5, top 10 even when it comes to three-point attempts, as long as he's healthy and has the ball in his hands a lot, because he's taking more shots than anyone else on this team. So it really just kind of comes down to that. That said, you still need to be shooting more threes, and you at least need more effective shooters out there from shooting from three than some guys that they have doing some of that. Jose Alvarado taking 4 attempts per game, but shooting 33.6% is not good. Najee Marshall taking 3 attempts per game, shooting 30%. Herb Jones taking 2.5. We talked about Herb Jones the other day, literally yesterday in the kind of like superlatives media day cliche show, shooting 2.5 per game, but shooting poorly. Even though the final 18, 15 games of the season, he was really good from there. You need to be able to get those shots and convert them. And it's not something the Pelicans do overall well. Buddy Hield could help you fix that. Buddy Hield could help you fix that because this is, without a doubt, one of the best shooters in the league. You may remember Buddy Hield from his rookie year, drafted over, by the way, Jamal Murray. And I'll tell you a funny story about that on here if you haven't listened to that podcast before. But was taken 6th overall by the Pelicans in the 2016 draft, then shipped out to Sacramento in the DeMarcus Cousins trade. I see a couple of y'all saying the Pelicans gave up too soon on Buddy. Gerald Tate says they gave up too soon on Buddy. Tim Byer says trading Buddy hurt the Pels because Cousins was a bust for us. Look, you do that trade for DeMarcus Cousins every single time, and he was a bust because he got hurt, not because of anything else. It was just simply the injury. He was good when he was healthy. Jessica Anderson says, shout out Jake every day. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. I'm excited for y'all to be hanging out. We'll keep doing these during the season too when we can. It'll be a little bit harder. It might be more sporadic. We'll have to plan them out in advance, but we'll make sure we're doing the live shows and everything too. You make that trade for DeMarcus Cousins every single time. Buddy Hield has one skill in the NBA, and it's shooting the 3 ball. And admittedly, he does it exceptionally well. But defensively, he doesn't give you much. He doesn't give you much in terms of creation for others, though he gets some assist, isn't a rebounder. Those are all things that kind of limit his game a little bit. But the one thing he does is in very high demand, and he does it incredibly well. This is a guy that for his career shoots 40.2% on very good volume, on 7.7 attempts per game. That number goes up if you just look at his time outside of New Orleans when he wasn't taking a ton of threes, and then those numbers start to skyrocket in every other year. His time in Sacramento, 40.2% on over 8 attempts per game. In the 2 seasons he's played with the Pacers, 2.5 really, he has shot 8.5 threes per game, and he shoots them at 41%. Those are all insanely good numbers, and I think he's going to make sense for a lot of teams. Every team should really be interested in bringing Buddy Hield in. But it doesn't make sense for every single team to actually do it. They should all be interested, but teams like the Los Angeles Lakers can't do this during the offseason. You have other teams like New Orleans where it makes sense, but when you look at their salaries and the trades, and y'all can go to the NBA trade machine here, it's tough to really make it work. I think, and I can pull this up. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen here as we do the live show, but if you go to the NBA trade machine, he's making, and he's an expiring deal. That's something to keep in mind too. And his contract's not terrible for what he gives you. It's $19.279 million, which honestly, for like the type of shooting he gives is really good. The problem is to match salary, the Pelicans have a little bit of trouble. You would probably need to do something like Jonas Valanciunas and say Kyra Lewis Jr. alongside like 1 or 2 picks, I think. This helps them duck a little bit of the luxury tax that they need to do more to get under it. But then what do you do at the center position? Give me a trade that makes sense to bring Buddy Hield in that doesn't really work where you don't have a glaring hole at the center spot unless you're going to start Zeller as a spot starter and then fill those minutes with Larry Nance Jr., and see if you can do that. But Valanciunas is still a good player. Would the Pacers do that when they want to kind of be competitive this year? I don't think so unless they trade Miles Turner somewhere else too. Then maybe you can get this where you expand the trade in some capacity. But the way it works is New Orleans doesn't really have a way to bring back the $19.272 whatever it was $1 million for Buddy Hield, and that's kind of a problem. Buddy and Miles Turner, I see Matt Harrison says. I don't even know how we would make something like that work. You would probably need to put like CJ McCollum in there, Larry Nance Jr. in that trade too. Probably works with CJ. Let's see. No, that doesn't even do it. You would have to take back even more. So you would need to add around a $7 million player. You do it with like TJ McConnell, let's say, coming to New Orleans. That works. CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas, Kyra Lewis Jr. for Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, and TJ McConnell. Like, I think you're trying to add Buddy to this core, to this team, not while losing CJ. So I think that's kind of part of the problem here. It just doesn't really seem like it's going to work with one of these trades. So Nola Starbar says, can we get Hield for Kyra and a pick? No, that the salaries don't work. Jake Warren says, nice name, by the way. Didn't Buddy Hield leave on bad terms? Also an everydayer. I love that. No, he didn't leave on bad terms. He was just traded. There was no bad terms. They really liked him. They really liked him. They drafted him over Jamal Murray, and we know what Jamal Murray has become. Matt Herron says, for what Buddy does, only 3-point shooting in the contract he's on, it's not worth it. We don't have the contracts to trade for him. That doesn't gut the roster. That's kind of the point, right? Like it just doesn't seem all that feasible in a way to make a deal work because the Pelicans are missing some of that kind of like mid-tier $15 million level salary because the top end of the roster is kind of not bloated, but it's just top heavy. So you got to kind of be cheap in other areas. Josh Darby says, I'll hold out until trade comes back. The way Zion and BI plays, our wing guys are open. I agree with that. Marco Villanueva says he's watching here from the Philippines. Silver Wolf watching from Australia. Oh, I love seeing everyone. We're all over the world. Levy Koenig is in from Australia as well. The earth is flat. No, it's not. Says, are we running it back with the same team? Are they still a potential trade to be made before the start of the season? Let's answer that question when we come back here because I do think that one's interesting and I've talked a good bit about that on there. Nola Starbar, I'll answer your question as well. And then Silverwolf has a great point as well about all of this. You all are making like excellent points in the chat today. Shout out everybody here. You're all smart. I love it. So let's get into that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good, and I wear these all the time. The Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, and they give you like a sculpted look. And they do the exact same things as like Lululemon, other brands, except they fit way better and they are cheaper. And they fit better than just your regular cotton shorts that are made of stiff, restricting material because they invented a cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. I've been in jury duty this week. Actually, it's why I'm not using the subtext, and I will fix that tomorrow, this weekend at some point. Worn my Birddogs, the joggers, a couple of days there. I'll be at the Tulane game on Saturday. You're going to see me running around in the Birddog shorts. They say, like, you won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. I'm wearing a pair right now. I'm not going to stand up and show you on camera, but I wear these absolutely all the time. One thing I love about the shorts is the pockets are deep. You can fit, your whole phone in there, and you don't need to worry about it like falling out if you sit down or anything like that. That goes a long way. It's breathable. It's stretchy. They're really great. You've got to give the Birddogs a try. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. I'm probably not taking mine off this whole weekend. Well, I'm going to put on different pairs. So I'm going to just be wearing Birddogs all weekend long. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday. We're back to 5 days a week, getting ready for Media Day. I just got my credential approval sent to me, which is awesome news. Working on some really fun stuff. I'm pitching something to a couple of folks about Media Day, so I'm excited for what we're going to be able to provide for you. I'll give you a little bit of a preview in yesterday's shows. We looked at the cliches that are going to match up with Pelicans players. Were there ones you agreed with, ones you disagreed with? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to support the channel, become an everydayer. The Earth is Flat says, yes, listen every day. I love it. Thank y'all so much for the people that tune in. And look, if you listen 1 day a week, try 2. See if you keep going to 3, 4, 5 days a week. Again, we are the #1 Pelicans podcast. We'll be doing the live shows. You've also probably noticed I don't use Twitter X very much anymore. The site just doesn't really work. It's not kind of doing what it once did. It's not a great way to interact with a ton of y'all. We launched the Locked On Pelicans subtext, which has been a lot of fun. I absolutely love it. It has been a good way and will be a good way for me to interact with y'all. It is free for 14 days. It's $4.99 a month after that. Try the 14 days. I'm going to be interacting with y'all. You can text me other things there. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited about it. I just put the link there in the comments here for y'all. Give it a shot. It's your way to interact one-on-one with me outside of doing these shows. If you don't like it after 14 days, that's okay. This podcast is still here, still going to be doing the live show, still interacting with y'all when I can, but that's just going to be the easiest way. So a couple of things. There were a couple of things I want to touch on with Buddy Hield before we move, or if we just go in like different directions too. Let's go into a few things here that I thought were really good comments on things. I got to find those. Again, Nola Starbart says, why does salary have to match in NBA trades? It's due to the collective bargaining agreement and just kind of the way the league works and the way the league operates. You know, you've heard me talk about at the start of the offseason, you can operate one of two ways. You are a team with cap space or an over the cap team. Most teams are now operating as over the cap teams because free agency doesn't really exist like it used to, besides the point. And in trades, when you're over the cap, you have to have salaries matched. So you have to basically send out the same amount of money that you're bringing back in terms of salaries. Specifically, why that's a thing, I don't exactly know, but that is how it works and how the league kind of governs itself. And that's just as simple as that. So when you look at trades, you need to have things like that because that's simply what it does here. Nola G says, Jake, Mr. Every Datter here for the ride. I appreciate you tuning in, my man. Thank you for being here. There were a couple of other questions. Silver Wolf had a great point too with Buddy Hield that I did want to mention, and this is actually in my notes. And he says, I think the real problem with trading for Hield is half the league will want him. He isn't going to go cheap. You are exactly correct. They probably had 10 teams call in the past 24 hours minimum talking about bringing Buddy Hield in. You know, given he's an expiring, that lowers his value a little bit, I think. You're not looking for expiring contracts like we were in the beginning of like the 2010s and all of that. But a lot of teams are going to be calling for him, which means it's going to take a pick or two to get Buddy Hield. That feels like a lot for a dude that could bolt. So that's part of the problem too, I think, when it comes to looking at trading for Buddy Hield, is he is going to get expensive. And I think that's an interesting thing to kind of keep in mind. Noel Starbar says, Vegas odds have Pels and Mavs as clear favorites to land Hield. Why does Vegas think that? Vegas, you know, one of the things with the Vegas stuff, and by the way, one of our sponsors, FanDuel here, is running a 50% profit boost for Louisiana customers only on a 3-leg same game parlay with the LSU Arkansas game this weekend. So if you're getting in on that, by the way, Vegas, go put a 3-leg parlay down on that game. You're going to get a 50% profit boost. You have to claim it in the app, but it's great. I'm going to throw something down on that one. LSU looks good. So Vegas does that because they want to encourage action, right? You know, they want you to kind of bet on both sides of this, and they want that money spread around to minimize their risk. So sometimes you put those odds out there for teams that just make sense, especially on player movement, to just entice as much action as possible and thus mitigate some of the risk that they face kind of over the larger scale with things. Okay, one of the things I do want to mention here is with Buddy Hield. You want a story? I've told this story on the podcast. I've told this around to a couple of different places. And this goes back to the Dell Demps era. The Pelicans liked Buddy Hield a lot. They also were very much interested in Jamal Murray, who went 7th, right, to the Denver Nuggets, 1 pick after. Jamal Murray, who just helped lead that team, second best player on the title-winning Denver Nuggets here, coming back from the injuries. He's like a go-to scorer, right? Like that dude is pretty good. He went 7th overall. What his career averages are, I don't see where they went. That's okay. So he's good. Simple as that. We all know Jamal Murray's good. He came in for a workout with the Pelicans. What they do in these pre-draft workouts is they'll kind of put you through some stuff. And usually it's very structured, very limited to the agent doesn't want his player to do something that would go poorly, let's say, and thus impact the draft stock or make a team not want to draft him, and then have that news come around the league like, this guy was bad and now no one should take him. It's kind of what happened with Jamal Murray. His agent left for something, like walked away or wasn't there. I don't exactly know where the agent was. And they let Jamal Murray play one-on-one against one of the Pelicans trainers, coaches at the times during the Dell Demps. It was Alvin Gentry era. I think it was Alvin Gentry era. And Jamal Murray couldn't guard a non-NBA player. Like, the dude was scoring on him repeatedly. And that shifted the Pelicans' mindset away from Jamal Murray. And it's like the reason they drafted Buddy Hield instead of Jamal Murray was that Murray got torched defensively during his pre-draft workout. I've told that story a couple of different times. I think I did a whole show on that during COVID. Kind of a fun little, like, what if everything right there. Mick Vanderfrago says, we're all waiting for ABJ 504. I'm waiting for him, dudes. Dude is if there was an award, if there was a Locked On Pelicans listener award, he would get like the first one. He literally just writes comment. That's it. Just comment lowercase every single day on YouTube. It's awesome. So consistent. It's so easy for him to do. I appreciate it so much. And it like truly helps the show. So it's a lot of fun that he does that. So Matt Harrison says Jamal Murray can't guard NBA players either. That's also true. But I do think as the league shifts more towards offense, that's kind of like a what if. Then they don't get DeMarcus Cousins, because part of the reason that trade was like so cheap for New Orleans was the Kings owner loved Buddy Hield, like thought he was the next coming of Steph Curry. It's not incorrect on some of that. Not Steph Curry though, right? Still really good shooter, really good player. And really wanted Buddy Hield, and so it allowed him to get a deal done for cheaper than they would have otherwise. Are there odds for where Giannis ends up next? I don't want to get on my phone and like do this while I'm here with y'all, but I would assume the Pelicans are going to be kind of high up on that too, right? Like they're going to be right on up there when it comes to Giannis. We did this show earlier in the week. You know, I saw a tweet that was like ESPN is saying like Pelicans are a team to watch out for when it comes to Giannis. You had Zach Lowe list him as like the third most likely team or team that makes sense to trade for Giannis. New Orleans I'd look, and I did the whole show saying, look, I'd trade Zion and picks for Giannis. Really as simple as that. And y'all know me, I'm a big Zion believer. Big on like going down with the Zion ship if they need to. I would move him for Giannis. I'm curious what you think. Would you trade Zion and some picks for Giannis? Like if you could do that trade today. Matt Harrison says Miami first, then Toronto, then the Pelicans. Look, being 3 in the Giannis race, that sounds cool to me. That says something about the way people think around the league and how they view the Pelicans' assets and what they're capable of pulling off. You also had Andrew Lopez of ESPN on the Low Post podcast saying like Griff knows he's got to do something with these picks and try and make a big move. So I do think that, you know, they maybe will call at some point about Giannis, and Giannis is putting a lot of pressure on the Bucks and is basically putting the Bucks in an impossible scenario. You know, you can spend the money that the double apron and the luxury tax all do to your team. Matt Ishbia with the Phoenix Suns is going to do that. The Golden State Warriors like print money, right? So they can afford to pay the extra $1 billion because why not? But it's not only about the money. It's also about the team building ability, tools that you have, and you lose those the longer you stay in that double apron territory. So even if the Bucks are willing to spend all of the money in the world, if you can't add players because you don't have your mid-level exception or other ways to add players in free agency, and you can't really do trades because it's more restrictive when you do that, it's tough. And that puts the Bucks in a really awful spot, which is something that will then only benefit the New Orleans Pelicans. So I love seeing the Giannis pressure when it comes to the Milwaukee Bucks, because that's something that's going to help the Pelicans very much in the long run. And Yeah, I covered the Pelicans, so we want all of that. So throw your questions in the chat, whether it's trade ideas, trade targets, those things. We'll start getting to those in the next segment. We'll go for a little while longer. I want to get a good night's sleep as I'm going to be in jury duty for one final day tomorrow, and then we can kind of get back and ready for normal. What are you excited to hear about when it comes to media day? All of that. I'm just excited to be back with y'all and that we're getting to basketball and media days around the corner, and I'm going to be there. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited about all of that. Can't wait. So let's get into your questions and everything coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. Do you need fresh groceries for the week, but you don't have time to go to the store? This was me this week. Try grocery delivery from DoorDash. You'll get everything you want delivered when you need it right to your door. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery deliveries that actually get delivered too. And with thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. And you'll get exactly what you ordered, or DoorDash will make it right. So sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. And you want even more value? You can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on eligible orders with a DoorDash Pass membership. And with easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. So get 50% off. I'm kind of shocked that they're doing that. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. Save $20 on groceries. That's awesome. Limited time offer. Terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20. No minimum subtotal and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here, even though I kind of botched the opening of the show and had the mic muted. I will delete that as I edit the show a little bit later. So we are the #1 Pelicans podcast. We are here Monday through Friday, back to 5 days a week with y'all. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. It's going to be a lot of fun. The Pelicans open practice, I think they just announced it, going to be October 8th. Elena G there says, open practice, anyone? Oh yes, I will be there. I will be running around, having a lot of fun. It's always great to see the costumes the rookies get forced to wear, the songs that they pick, like who's going to be singing Party in the USA, which always gets played there among some other songs. A couple of years ago, I did the color commentary for the live stream of it, which was really cool, working with the Pelicans. So I will be there. If you're going to be at the open practice, let me know and I will come say hi with y'all. Some of y'all asked me to sign things, which is just weird. There was a guy last year, and look, I'll do it if you really, really want, who had all of the Pelicans players and coaches sign his hat, and he wanted my signature on there, and I feel like I devalued that. But if that's what you want, we'll do that too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for there just to be like real basketball and stuff like that. Again, it's going to be so much fun. And that's why we are back to 5 days a week, gearing up for everything here. So this is kind of your time to shine. If you got questions, throw them in the chat. I got things we can talk about too. Trust me, I could probably talk for days and days and days and just never stop. Jake Warren says, I still believe Zion has a few healthy seasons. He could be the face of the league and a top 5 player. Absolutely. If he's healthy, and as we talked about in yesterday's show, he is definitely the guy who's going to say, like, I'm in the best shape of my life. I do think he means it. It's what do you do a little bit after that? When you get to that adversity, when the season gets tough and you're hurt and you don't want to have to do the rehab or sit out and all of those things. Is it going to be that? We'll see. Mick Evander Frago says, would be nice if Giannis comes and gets a chip. He recently said that he wants to feel that everyone around him is all in for another championship, and this Pelicans team and organization is definitely desperate, except for going over the cap and paying the tax. If they got Giannis, they would pay the tax. They would pay the tax a lot. It's like you would just have to, otherwise he wouldn't be coming here and wouldn't want to be here. And Silverwolf says, Giannis is one of the few players in the league I trade Zion for, and that's just because Giannis is proven a class act. Look, he's a 2-time MVP, former defensive player of the year. Like, the accolades speak for themselves when it comes to him. He's like still in his prime. Yeah, he's closer to 30 than not 30, but I even think that's okay. He's like one of the few players that I would absolutely move at pretty much everything you can. So it's going to be, he's absolutely like a guy that I would trade almost anybody for. Silver also says Zion could be as dominant, if not more, than Giannis. He just isn't there yet. It's just the health. I don't know if he'll be dominant in a different way. Giannis is dominant, also defensively dominant too. That's an important thing to think about with it all. I don't know if Zion doesn't have defensive. I'll just say that. I don't think. Zion doesn't have defensive player of the year potential. He can get better defensively. He has room for improvement defensively, but he is never going to be that Giannis level. Giannis is 7 foot, right? Probably taller than that. He's probably listed at, let me see, whatever, but his wingspan is just freaking bonkers here. What are they? 7 foot. Yeah, and his wingspan is insane. He's a 5-time all-defensive guy, 7-time all-NBA guy, right? He's just good. Like, he's so good. Also, again, class act too, right? It's nice to have guys that you want to root for, that you really like. All of that stuff, I think, genuinely matters too. Kevin Byer says, are there any sleepers on our roster who could surprise, in all caps, surprise us? I'm curious what y'all think, actually. I might turn that into a show. That's a very good question. In terms of guys that are sleepers that are going to have like big seasons or be like sneaky contributors, is that kind of what you're saying, I think? I think you look at, there's only so many guys, right? You know what CJ is. You know what Zion is. You know what BI is. Valanciunas isn't going to be a sleeper guy, even though he could have a big season the way they use him offensively. And I talked about that in yesterday's show. Larry Nance Jr., who I love, I think is kind of tapping out his potential a little bit. Is it maybe going to be a guy like Dyson Daniels who steps up? Could it be someone like EJ Liddell in the face of an injury, which there are, getting minutes and being a solid contributor? Is it Jordan Hawkins? I think those are kind of the guys that you would be looking at that are just kind of like the natural ones that don't have a role carved out. Would you count Najee if he's getting 15, 20 minutes per game and just kind of doing the things that he needs to do? Like, is that kind of considered a sleeper? I'm curious. It depends kind of on the criteria with that, but I think it's those kind of guys. Dyson Daniels would look great defensively. I think he could take a big leap forward. Jake Warren says Herb could maybe make a decent offensive jump. He's going to come into media day and be like, yeah, I worked on my shot. Like, I worked on my shot all off season because they need him to. And he was also shooting 45%. So like, yeah, if he carries over the form for those final 15 games or so and he shoots 45% from three, like, absolutely, that's huge with what he gives you defensively. It then also entrenches him into the starting lineup, and you don't need to be like, is it going to be Herb? Is it going to be Trey? Because we were going to do a whole show about all of that. Chompy Doc, are Zach Collins, Kelly Olynyk, Isaiah Jackson, or campaign likely trade targets or signings? Probably not campaign. The other three are big: Zach Collins, Kelly Olynyk, Isaiah Jackson. I like Isaiah Jackson. I think that would work. It's just kind of like a cheap guy that you could go and get that, gives you a little bit more depth at the center position. Like, yeah, I think those are all potential trade targets for the Pelicans. Olynyk is where? He is, he's on what team right now? Not YouTube. Doesn't even show me. Okay, whatever. He plays for a team somewhere, I guess. I don't know why it's not showing that to me right now, but okay, whatever. That's kind of weird on Basketball Reference here. Utah Jazz, there we go. So like, yeah, he makes a ton of sense. You could get him. He's a guy that you can go and grab. Some of the other ones too. I don't know if Zach Collins is particularly good, so I don't know if that's a guy you would really go after, but there are certainly guys that are kind of like options and everything. Siap says, yeah, Jazz. Whoops. Missed that one. I don't know why Basketball Dash Reference was being kind of weird here. Silverwolf says, whole roster has potential. Not sure how many sleepers there are. Jonas being used better. Dyson, maybe. I'm biased on him, though, and I think he's good anyway. I do love the Australian down under contingent here that loves him and wants to see him succeed. It's fun to have people around the world, rooting for the Pelicans and all of that. So, yeah, I think those are the most likely guys, right? The people that don't have a role carved out, that have lower expectations and then kind of beat those low expectations. Like, yeah, that's like a sleeper then, right? Like, guy that was kind of not thought about, slept on is kind of where it comes from. So that's, I think, really what they would be. Those are kind of the names there. I think Jose as much as I love him, I don't see that being kind of like his like explosive role, and he's kind of established too. So no, I don't think there's really anyone else that I think makes a ton of sense here. Chompy Doc says, is there a backup point guard that we could trade or sign for, or is Kyra the backup to start the season? I think it depends. The backup's Jose, unless he's not going to be ready to go for the start of the season, in which case, yeah, it'll probably default to Kyra, I think. They should give Kyra some run, really try and see what they have in him. They need to make a decision on him this offseason, so I think that's kind of important to do anyway. So yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't think they're going to actively look to upgrade that position through trade. There's no one out there in free agency that's like worth signing at this point. Otherwise, they would have done that. So I think you kind of have it, Kyra, but it should be Jose first and foremost for everything. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up there for today's live episode of Locked On Pelicans. We will do these again here. Jason Sims says, here 5 days a week. I appreciate you, my man, being in every day. Or if you want to support the Locked On Pelicans podcast, listen Monday through Friday. I recently had someone tell me they started listening for daily fantasy advice and then weren't a Pelicans fan, but became a Pelicans fan, and now they listen to the show regularly, which is honestly probably one of the best endorsements I could possibly get. So that was really freaking cool. So I appreciate y'all being here, making Locked On Pelicans part of your day. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast. We are here 5 days a week as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Go check out Locked On Saints. Can the Saints go to 3-0? I was texting with Ross Jackson earlier. Love that dude. He's doing a great job. Don't forget Locked On NBA. You can see it where it says watch next there. I'm there every Wednesday except for this past week. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for making me and the show part of your day. Enjoy the weekend. We'll be back on Monday with a whole other show. I will hopefully see you at the open practice. We'll get to your questions and more in the next coming weeks. Don't forget the subtext. It'll be in the description down below. I'll post it here again. Give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to using that. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. I'll be back with y'all